Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
How's everybody? Is it hot where you are?
Indeed, it is.
Yes, it is.
It was even hot in the low mountains today. I left the low mountains and came to the lake. Well, so you know it's hot here. Lake Norman, it's just like nuclear here. It's 103.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Oh, it's cooled down now. It's just 90. What is it? It's 98. That's not bad. That's kind of normal here. But I was in the low mountains today. Not that I wasn't in the high mountains. I was like it's about 1,500 feet. It was 97 there today. 1,500 feet above sea level. It's usually a couple degrees from there, but it's not like getting above 3,000 feet when you get above the divide. But it's hot for that part of the world. But yeah, it's pretty warm there today. I can only imagine the sand hills. I'll be in Goldsboro next weekend. It'll be brutal there.
Wouldn't go in a room. He wouldn't go to bed. Started wrestling his mom, kicking her. He bullied her. Yeah, he bullies her. And then.
All right. Well, welcome back tonight. This is case study night. I don't know how many folks we're going to have. I hope we'll have enough that everybody gets their presentation in. But I'm going to go ahead and do our stars of the week, and then we'll look at our weekly schedule. Our stars of the week, Olivia. Folks are still joining us here, but I'm going to go ahead and get started. Olivia talked about discussion board 4 about cyberbullying and sexual harassment. She talked about the series of documents that you have to fill out to document that you have followed due process. That's the procedural part. That's not the substance. There's Olivia now. And she pointed that out, that in her district, they make them fill out all these documents to document that they have done the procedural due process. That's to protect the district. They've got a record. So if you've got the substance of due process for cyberbullying and for Title IX sexual stuff. Here's the law. Follow it. They've gone a step further and said, we want you to fill out these documents at these phases to make sure that you have followed the procedure for due process. Now, how does that relate to negligence? If there's a lawsuit that says that you failed to act, or the school district failed to act, if you can't document that you followed that procedure, the school system will separate from you and say, this is on them as an individual. We bear some responsibility for hiring them, but this is on them. And misfeasance, malfeasance, nonfeasance. This is nonfeasance. You had a duty to act. You didn't show that you did that, and they'll get you. And Olivia's in a smaller district. I don't know if they would be that mercenary, but I could tell you right now, having worked in that one and a couple more, and worked in the 2 largest in the state, spent 17 years in Charlotte. In Charlotte, they would absolutely separate from you. If you couldn't document that you followed the procedure, they would absolutely file a motion in court that you would have to do this on your own, that they would not be a party to this, that you on your own had decided not to follow. They would show that they had policies in place. They would show the content or the substance of the policy. They would show the procedure that was in place. And if you couldn't document that you did those things, they'd simply separate, and you'd be looking at a nonfeasance negligence claim, but you didn't follow due process. You didn't do that. Now, that's the least of your worries. Remembering those 3 assistant principals out in Bellingham, Washington, they're facing criminal charges for not reporting. So it could get very ugly. But as Olivia said, it's very helpful that you have those documents. But understand that knife cuts both ways. It's helpful, but also it documents if you didn't do your job as well on the procedural part of due process. So understand that. So you better know what documents are out there for you. Sean pointed out that social media does not require a warrant. However, you better have the resource officer with you for chain of custody. Because as soon as the perpetrators find out that you're investigating them, what will they do with social media accounts? Now, you show up in court or you show up at the hearing, remember it can go from you to the principal to the superintendent to the school board to court. You show up in court with a screenshot of what they did, and all they have to say is, we don't know where that came from. Not my account. Wasn't me. Didn't do it. But if the school resource officer is there with you, what does he do? He takes it into custody at that point. And there's not a question later on when it gets to court of whether that was in there. Now, they could claim that they were hacked. They would have to show that. But, you're defeated before you start if you start pulling down social media posts without the police present. Because there's no chain of custody. They can come from anywhere. So you need to make sure that you're doing that. Now, David pointed out being a responsible person. There's David right there. Now, it used to be called person. It used to be called person responsible. So, for example, when I went to Gardner Webb, when I first went, I wasn't a person responsible because I wasn't a department chair. I wasn't a program coordinator. There was only 3 people in the College of Ed that were persons responsible. That law changed in 2021. If you get a paycheck now, you're a responsible person. They reversed that phraseology. You're a responsible person. If you get paid and a kid comes to you and reports, you have to follow through. I was asked last night, what about a counselor? They said that she used her discretion and didn't feel like the report was credible. That's the fastest way I know to the unemployment line is discretion. My big grand finale last night is the worst thing for a school administrator operationally is to think outside of the box. We might want you to do that instructionally, but remember, that was last semester. This semester, we're all about law and policy and playing inside the lines of the box. That notion that you have discretion when a report is made to you, oh no, you have no discretion. You are, if you get a check at the school, you're a responsible person. You have to report. Now, the rest of that story is the counselor didn't believe the child and the child ran away looking for the child. That would not go well for you. That this child came to you and you deemed their report not to be credible, didn't pass it on, and then the child runs away from home. How do you think that would play? You have no discretion. You report. You are everybody on the screen where you work. You get a check. You're a responsible person. There's no question now. There's no question. What about the custodian? He gets a check. He's a responsible person. Everybody that gets a check in your building now is if they're an employee, that means they get a check. They're a responsible person. So we keep circling back to those magical required work days. What should we be doing on those required work days? We should be covering all this kinds of stuff. We were talking last night, you got to be covering your master schedule, the grading, and, discipline, all that stuff. But somebody was talking about number 5, and I'll get to that when we move to number 5 right here. Olivia was talking about staff has too much power. They arbitrary and they're capricious. The young ones aren't trained well enough. Young people think they've got it bad. No, we don't have enough days. Wait till you get old. You'll understand what bad is. There's very few things. But here's the thing. You can leverage young people. They don't have annual leave days. So what does that mean? They have to come on work days, right? Who has the most problem with classroom discipline, being consistent? That'd be young teachers. what should you be doing with them on those non-required work days, but were required for them because of the absence of annual leave days? Now, what I am advocating, and we started this last semester, we need to be working on instructional things during our planning time. We need to be working on instructional things. This semester, you've not heard me say one thing about planning time PLCs, because that's reserved for instruction. That time is sacred. It's most important. What I've talked to you about this semester is how are you going to use your work days, folks? Your required ones, when everybody's got to be there, you got to get the big ticket items in on those. But working individually with classroom management, that you've got them there, the ones that are having the problem. Why are you not doing that? Discipline starts with teachers being consistent in their referrals, being realistic in there. You know, he probably didn't kill somebody. Sometimes I read these referrals and then it'd be like, you know, that killed 7 people. You know, they've got to be realistic, you know, because your punishment's going to be based on that. That's the legal document. And, you know, you got to work with teachers on, you know, being consistent, you know, not letting Jenny get by with it, but, you know, throwing the book at Jimmy, that kind of stuff, and being consistent and being accurate in their reporting. Classroom management, a lot of discipline is not really discipline, it's just poor classroom management. And I've told you before, I'm at the big house tonight. My wife taught right across the water over there. You know, all those student teachers that she had, they never learned the first thing about classroom management. She's little, but she's mighty. She's the queen of mean. Kids wouldn't, you know, the kind of kids they had and the reputation that she 15 years she taught there, never had a discipline, never sent a kid to the office, ever. What is a student teacher going to learn from her on classroom management? It's all understood. They don't get it. They don't know it. We don't put them in places where they can learn. You need to be working those work days to get that. Again, that discipline takes time. Try to be consistent, but it starts with that referral. It starts with teachers being able to handle their business in the classroom. You've got teacher work days for those young teachers. You need to utilize. That's the point on that. That was a good point. Again, Olivia pointed out that high schools have too much power. They don't do due process. They're arbitrary. They're capricious. But you know, the thing, Olivia pointed that out. But here's the sad side of that. That's every high school everywhere. High school people don't follow the rules. They just don't. You know, we were talking about. I was with one of my doctoral students this morning. We were talking about that you know, it's the big kids at high school. I mean, middle school teachers act like middle school kids. They're petty, they're trivial, they're dramatic, they whine, they cry, they pitch a fit. But high school teachers are sometimes just mean. They're like older adolescents. They're just vindictive. And you know that if that's the culture of your building, then young people pick up on culture. Culture eats strategy for breakfast every morning. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. And so you've got to work with you've got a chance to work with these young people and get them going in the right direction first. That's what I do. Lillian talked about lack of classroom management causes problems with consistency and due process. That's exactly right, Lillian. Alicia was talking about training teachers, but she also said that teachers, you have to teach them how to build relationships with their students. And that's a big part of classroom management. Not be their friends, but build relationships. Alicia also said that their district just recently has had to pay out several lawsuits, about half a $1 million, about 500,000 over inappropriate behavior, lack of due process, not following through, exceptional children, all that stuff. Well, that's a cultural thing. That starts. That's a cultural thing. And then Jeanette said that all interventions aren't for all students. Talking about disciplinary interventions. We're not talking about academic. And see, that gets into the concept of fair. Now, I've told you this before and I'll tell you again. In the adult world, there's no such thing as fair. The only fair in the adult world is where you go in the fall of the year and get a corn dog, ride the Ferris wheel down in Delaware. It's fair. There is no such thing as fair. But because we try to be fair, we do the same thing to everybody. That's not being fair. That's, that we need to get out of the concept of fair, the same for everybody. We need to get into equity. Different kids need different kind of interventions. I've heard administrators say, well, I've suspended that kid 6 times. He's still doing the same thing. He's not the one with the problem. Now, I remember specifically I had an AP that said that. Now, quote me directly. I did not call him a pinhead. What I said was he could wear a thimble for a hat. If you suspended a kid 6 times and he hadn't slowed down, that intervention's not working. That's not his fault. That'd be on you. Every intervention doesn't work with every kid. But in our attempt to be fair, we want to be consistent. We want to be fair. We do the same thing to every kid, whether that works with them or not. That's the dumbest thing you can do. That is truly the dumbest thing that you can do. You got to find something that works with kids. Restorative justice. That doesn't mean that we do the same thing. We find what works best for that particular kid.
Well, Dr. Lamb, I think
Yes.
that's the hardest thing for teachers to see. They think that you are not being fair, and then they have issues because me transitioning to a different position, me learning how to do due process, they are very frustrated in sometimes the consequences that are given.
Yeah, but when they write referral, it comes to you. You need to establish early on in your administrative career. You brought it to me, now it's mine. Go back to your room. You're done.
Okay.
We don't do discipline till you get satisfied. That's not how it works. Till you get your pound of flesh. And I more than one time, I wish I had $1 for every time I said this. Today's my day to be in charge. I'll let you know when it's your day. Sometimes you just have to be that blunt because teachers are being that blunt with you. You don't support us. That's not my job to support you. Where does it say that in my contract that my job is to support you? We don't run this place for you. We run it for the kids. Now I'm trying to do the right things for kids, working with you, through you, for them. But that when it comes down to choice between you and them, it has to be them every time. Has to be them every time. But teachers think that your job is there to make their life easier, period. We don't run schools for people to have jobs. That's not the point of school. I wish somebody would walk up on me about something like that. Well, I get to tell my side of the story. But you have to establish in a way that you've written the referral. You don't get to be the judge, jury, and executioner. That's not due process. An independent person is supposed to do this, not the person that's mad at it. And to finish up, Bill kind of summarized it when he said, discipline starts with classroom management, and that we kind of work all the way back until we understand that. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Sean, I see you've joined us. I talked about yours. Social media doesn't require a warrant, but you need the police there for chain of custody. So when they erase their post, you have a record of it that's official, that can't be disputed in court because police took it into custody. All right. Okay, let's look at our schedule right quick, and then we'll get to our presentations. All right, we're at week 6 already. You're doing and y'all get a week off from me next week. I know y'all are happy about that. And then of course our discipline night. I'll go ahead and apologize now. It'll be a long night. That won't be an hour night. There's so much under discipline, especially when we talk about alternative schools, and EC. Because those are function of discipline. But yeah, we'll go through the manual and a little slower, and we'll look at some other things, and we'll talk about all the reporting pieces and all that. And so it may be a 2-hour night. I'll try to make it as brief as I can, but we'll do that. Then we got our case study 3, and then we'll look at liability and that last one, and some roundup kind of things, and then we'll have our case study 4, which is about everything we've learned since you started the program. Kind of is involved, from EC to no walkthroughs to PLCs not working, and EC, EC kids having, bad classroom practices, having kids teach other kids. It's just everything. Everything's in that one. Skip's in it about, those long-term goals. We could be having parent meetings there. They don't understand the inclusion model. We hadn't told them. We could be having a parent night on that. All those kinds of things. We're not communicating with parents. So everything is bundled up in that last case study. It's fairly simple, but there's just a lot to it. All right, I'll stop my share. Get out my pencil with the sharp tip on it here. And start taking notes. All right, who's first tonight on our case study about Leandra? It pulled up. No need to look at it. You know what it is. And so, remembering this is the seminal case that in the United States of America that supports the continuation of flat grant funding. And remember, the Leandro case was not about give us more money. It was about change the funding formula. So by virtue of that, we'll get more money. They wanted a constant stream or a system. They didn't want just give us a little bit once every now and then when you feel like it, when it's election year. And give it to the politicians so they can pork barrel it and not actually get to the kids. We want how you fund school change. That was the gist of Leandro. And remember, they lost. Now they said you got to give us some money. You got to give them money. We did the lottery. Lottery is zero money for education. Zero. It's embarrassing how some of the pork barrel projects that we've done with that money, but they've all been capital. None of them have come. Not a penny's come to educate a child. And, what was it? 2 years ago, Judge Lee, before he retired, said the General Assembly owes $2 billion to schools. And their response was, nanny, boo, boo, we don't want to. And so they've not given a penny. So that's the context of this. But the overarching is if this one is the exact replica of the case in Chapel Hill, Carver. Discretionary money paid for a small group of schools to do a pilot, work with them, and then said, we'll just do it district-wide, took discretionary money, but encumbered it for more than the year. Can't do that. She signed to 800. She already spent it a couple of years. And so in the end, it was about $1 million. The last contract was around 800,000, but you can't do that. You can't, that money can't be encumbered from one year to the next. It's discretionary. You're intentionally avoiding board oversight by doing that, by using discretionary money that doesn't require it, and you're directly violating Leandro. So the finance officer was fired. The superintendent was allowed to resign. Criminal charges against the bookkeeper, the CFO, for having done that. The superintendent was lucky to escape with just being able to resign. And so it is the exact case. People say, well, if it was legal, how could he do it before schools? Well, you got discretionary money. It's exactly what she did in Chapel Hill, Carver. It's exactly what she did. I've often thought she'd taken this class, she might avoid doing this. I've often thought maybe she did see this and thought, hey, I'm smarter than this bunch. I'll try this. They won't know the difference. But that's the context of what we are. So the overarching is, if the superintendent, who is the highest ranking employee in the school district, can't do it, can't move federal, state, or local money, then you can. And again, don't be thinking outside the box. This is, again, not the time to be trying to try something new or outside the box. This is follow the rules. All right, who's first?
Did my team want to go first?
Sure, why not?
Sure. One second, let me pull up presentation.
Were you digging? Huh? Nope.
Are y'all able to see it?
We see Zoom.
That's it. That's not what we want. Hold on one second.
Do, 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 do. It's down to 97. I feel a chill in the air.
No lie, on the way back from Inman, South Carolina, my air conditioning went out, and it was 98 out there.
Oh yeah, that's great.
Yeah, fun
What were
drive
you
back.
doing in the thriving metropolis of Inman?
Getting the training so I could take the certification test to do observations.
Oh, good. Good.
Didn't you want me to try to pull it up?
Yes, I'm having difficulties.
How'd that go, Sean?
It's pretty good training. Sorry, I was shoving my food in my face. I figured you didn't want to see that. Good training. My off the cuff comment: the training's good. It's good background on getting you up to speed to use the rubric and to see what they're trying to do. My internal monologue when the state started talking about, well, we got teachers we have schools whose average of the teachers don't match. The school's not performing, but all the teachers are great.
The performance, yeah.
Yeah. My thought goes through my head as well. If you didn't tie observation performance to you get to keep your job, then they're never going to tell you how they're actually doing on the observation performance. They're going to make the numbers so they can keep the teacher and still keep trying to work with the teacher.
Yeah.
Can y'all see that?
Yeah. 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 But that, it's just like in a lot of private schools, you have grade inflation because they're paying, they expect to graduate. And I know exactly what you're talking about. The teacher in school performance doesn't match their observations. And so a friend of mine, I was already in central office, but he was high school principal, superintendent, starting principal meeting of the year in Charlotte, the one right before school opens. It's a big deal. News media is there. You have to wear your suit, polish your shoes. Made him sit down front and called him out in front of everybody and said, got a low performing high school here that's doing all this. Not one teacher in the building below standard, not one on an action plan. Got 200 teachers here. Now, how does that work? And of course, that was his last day there. But now, over at the early college, that's what they want over there. It's a go along to get along kind of thing, because those kids are a lot better and they're there, they're achievers and all that. And the teachers over there are different. But at a normal high school, you're exactly right. The problem comes in, you actually report what you see, and then you lose those teachers, and then you got nobody. So I get it, and that portends that you need to be growing them, and if you don't get the ones you want, you need to grow the ones you want. We've talked about that. That's the whole notion of that. That's why we tell you early. You're not going to get the best ones. I was working with Courtney, my doctoral student, this morning. That one of the things that we're looking at is, a lot of the young people haven't even committed to this is their career. This is just a job. In the first 5 years, you can't get them to commit that they're going to do this tomorrow, much less next year. And what do you do about that? And then when you get to a certain stage in your life, and usually the bell rings around 50 or early 50s, mid 50s. You should have to start doing elder care. You have other priorities in your life. My wife and I, our time span for elder care with our parents lasted 1 month short of 10 years. And it started, how old was I? It started when I was 52. Started when I was 52 and lasted until I was 62. So I've been out of a few years now, but yeah, 1 month short of 10 years. Do you think that if you're doing elder care, do you think that affects your ability to do your job, even if you're a veteran? Lord have mercy. Does it affect retention? Of course it does. A lot of people have to retire. My wife had to retire from her dream job to take care of her mother. So the notion here is we have different problems retaining people at different points in their career. We have a real problem retaining beginning teachers because they haven't committed yet. And we've got to get in there and work with them. If they get better at it, I think they'll commit more and sooner. That's the notion here. That's why I was talking about before we got here. Those work days ought to be golden because those are the people that got to come. They are the ones that have got to come. They don't have enough vacation annual leave days. They got to come to all the work days. But it's just like parents grounding their kids. You know why parents don't ground their kids? Because they have to stay at home with them. You know why we don't train beginning teachers on work days? Because we have to be at school with them. But those days you ought to protect those with your life, because that can change the culture. That can change everything in your building. Don't do stuff on protect planning period for academic purposes. Work with those kids. You got them every day in planning that you can work. But because we don't want to work with them on all the other stuff on teacher work days, we're not focused on instruction during planning. And so, but yeah, if they come on work days, you got to be there with them if you're doing training. That's the problem. All right, here we go.
Okay, good evening. Tonight we'll be going over case study number 2, letters to the community. Our team is Mr. Hampson, myself, Dr. Williams, and Ms. Whitty. Next slide, please.
I'm trying. Can y'all see it?
We can see it's just not moving, kind of like me. See me, I'm not moving in this heat.
Click at the bottom where it says slide 1 of 14. Click the right arrow.
I'm on background information right now.
It's not showing.
Megan, give me a second.
So just to give you some background information about the case study,
Sure.
the school-based budgeting, which we call SBB,
I'm back.
allows principal to allocate funds among various needs in a budget. Our SBB needs to have all stakeholders invested in the allocation process. Those that work with student most should have decision input on how the money should be spent, and funds at each site should be distributed equally.
It's still loading. I'm not sure it's taking so long. I apologize.
Can you click on to the slide 2? Will allow you to.
There you go.
Okay. I'll leave it on presentation mode. I'll just leave it on this mode.
Okay, so we're on slide 3 now.
Okay. Sorry about that.
Leandro versus State of North Carolina. The district of 5 low-wealth counties with families filed the lawsuit in 1994. They argued that their district could not provide an equal education due to the lack of funds. These district counties were already taxing residents at a higher than average rate. The Supreme Court ruled in 1997 and 2004 that under the Constitution of North Carolina was obligated to ensure all children are provided access to a sound basic education. Another point is that in 2018, Judge Lee ordered an independent consultant, West Ed, to recommend ways North Carolina could comply. West Ed found 8 critical areas that
Take
needed
it
to
off
be
of me.
addressed
Thank you.
to ensure all students receive a sound basic education. Okay, slide 4.
Yep.
These are the West Ed findings. Number 1, that the state funding model needed to be revised to provide efficient and equitable resources. Number 2, each school needed a qualified and diverse teaching staff. Number 3, each school needed a qualified and well-prepared principal. Number 4, any at-risk student should be provided with the opportunity to attend a high-quality early childhood education program. Number 5, economical disadvantaged students need direct resources, initiatives, and opportunities. Number 6, school accountability and student assessment system needed revisions. Number 7, a state system should be developed to assist low performing in our high poverty schools. And the last one, number 8, an expert panel should be created to assist the court in monitoring plans, programs, policies, and progresses. Now we're going to actually discuss the current policies, and we're going to tell you the things that some of the superintendent did correctly and some of the things that he did not do correctly. And then we're going to conclude with the outcome of this dilemma.
Okay, so we all read this case study, and so we have some background information on what had happened in this case. So the first thing that we talked about as our group is the superintendent, was using a school-based budget as an option for schools, for the school to implement. And according to the text, the school-based budget is allocated dollars that's directly spent to schools based on the number of students enrolled and the specific needs of those students. However, the only meeting with the principals of the pilot group is not going to give a solid understanding of how the SBB works in these schools or how it will work as a district. So student-based budgets must include all stakeholders, especially those who work closely with the students. Next slide. All right, so with this SBB talks about planning, discussion, and ensuring that the administration can make solid or sound decisions in the money that's being allocated. With the principals in the pilot group, the principals given access to, well, the principal was the given access. The superintendent just stated that they're going to be getting these funds. This is how it's going to work, and that if there are any questions, you are going to contact the school principal, as opposed to taking honest of what is supposed to have been done. It clearly states that this was a conversation that should have been had with the superintendent, as opposed to having the blame pushed or the responsibility pushed on to the principal. The letter to Superintendent John D. reads as if the district will still oversee the funds, as he said. We are literally putting dollars behind our student goals. One of our group discussion was, we found this funny because who is going to track this money across districts, across students, as students become transient students from school to school? Will there be a special department that's going to determine, okay, Johnny moved from Plainview Elementary in September, then he went to South Elementary in October, and then went to North Elementary in November. Since this money is supposed to follow each of the students, who's going to keep track of this, of this?
Okay. Let me ask you a question.
Mhm.
All these are valid points, but the first question you have to answer is school-based budgeting, student-based budgeting, they're used interchangeably.
Right.
Is it legal in North Carolina according to Leandra?
It was, no.
No. So all the rest of this is a moot point about how it would work. You can't do it. That's the
Right.
first thing you need to say. Now, West Ed. I appreciate West Ed, but West Ed's not the law. What they said is you ought to do these things, but what did the Supreme Court say? They said no. We haven't. All we have to do is send enough money for a basic education, and whatever we send, that's what it costs. That was the ruling, and you won't. We're not going to manipulate the money, and they put in there. Remember the finding from Duke Law School. Not only that summarize it. Not only is the state not going to regulate or move money, you can't either. So this is not a legal thing. But your points are valid that if we were going to do it, now a number of states do it, and that's when we would talk about how we would do it. So he had an ill-conceived plan. You're exactly right. But the issue is in law and policy, is it a legal plan? No. We got flat grant funding. North and South Carolina have flat grant funding. A kid is a kid is a kid. You get this much money, and whatever the state says it is. Now, West Ed's an independent group that came in and said, y'all not been giving them enough. And Judge Lee agreed, said, you got to give them $2 billion. And the legislature said, we don't have to. You can't make us give them any money because the law is still on the books that says we don't have to do that. So remember, the Leandro plaintiffs lost the lawsuit. That means flat grant funding 31 years after this started is still in place. You cannot do this. You can't move federal money. It follows the kid. You can't move state money because that's what they told you. And you can't move local money because the law said not only do we're not going to move it locally, you can't move it either. And so that's what we got to focus on here is and the whole point of the case is you have to know, don't think, especially don't be thinking outside the box. You can run some of these little programs like he ran the year before with a couple of pilot schools, but even that's a fool's errand. Even that's a fool's errand. Why? Because of the county commissioners. Who funds schools? County commissioners. How are county commission elections run? By district. So guess who's mad that their schools in their district get more money? That somebody else got more money than theirs got. Their parents are mad too. Will they vote to do that? Would they vote for that? Absolutely not. You went around their vote. You went around their permission using discretionary money. You think the county commissioners might be mad about this? So I said, this is a fool's errand. The law is not in your court here. Now, the ethics are on your side. Doing the right things on your side, but law and policy are not on your side. This is exactly what the Chapel Hill Carver superintendent did that got her fired and got the finance officer fired and in court. Can't do this. Leandro said, states, you can't move state money and you should not, and you're not allowed to move local money either. And you know you can't move federal money. So that's what you got to focus on here, not how we would do it or that. Yes, he had a bad plan. It was ill-conceived. Thrown it together. This is a good analysis of that. But the first analysis in Leandro is what he doing legal? That's your first analysis. In anything like this, remember this is a law course. Is it legal? Then we get into the ethics and the actual process of it. You're talking about ethical concerns, putting the burden on the principal, not fully the ethics of profession, not having a real plan. Yeah, these are all ethical issues with the superintendent. Legal comes first. Is it legal? Absolutely not. What law? Leandra. What did they say? Can't move state or local money to do this. After that, you're pretty much done. And it's an example. And the reason why this is a superintendent case, if the superintendent can't do it, you can't do it as a principal. You can't be crossing funding streams or moving money to somewhere where it was unintended. And you have to be careful, even with discretionary monies, not to make the people who actually fund you, like county commissioners, angry. That's exactly what happened in Charlotte-Mecklenburg with the Gang of Five back in the 90s. We used some discretionary money and made them angry, and we had to let 200 people go because they cut our budget significantly. In response to that, they threw a temper tantrum. This is real life, folks. All right, please continue.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was on mute. We can go on to slide 8. So, ultimately, the success of any SBB depends upon the makeup of each school in the district and how similar or different that they are. According to the text, to be truly effective when using the SBB money resources within any site, it must be distributed equitably across all students. In each of the schools in the district that has similar clientele, that this method may work. However, there are 1 or 2 schools with the number of students who are low income or high needs or AIGA learners, or whatever the case may be, in which careful considerations when dealing with these allocated SBB funds will then be these funds could not either be used or there might be discretionary measures.
Is that me?
I think so.
Okay. So what I focus on is what happened to the superintendent, and we talked about, like, could she have used a priority-based budget? It would ensure the district focused on the school improvement plans, and it would prioritize the programs in each district and the cost of those programs, and it would allow the district to implement the tools necessary to ensure schools are doing what the stakeholders expect. I mean, what she could have done, with a priority-based budget, all stakeholders involved come together to ensure that the funding is assigned in an agreed-upon priority order, like including the governing board, the district, school staff, and the public. They should be reevaluated each year as priorities change, and each time the budget is reevaluated, all the stakeholders should be involved, just like the first time. It's meant to ensure that the funds are not spent on items like staffing and program that do not align with the district goals and policies. So reallocating funds once they've been set in a budget, you can't do that. But equality should still be a focus here, as not all schools need the same thing. Like, for example, not all schools in a district need a behavior specialist. So instead of splitting the time at each school equally, the time should be prioritized at the schools that need it, that support the most. The priority-based budgeting is for money, staffing, and resources is a better option to ensure equity. Parents and community members may need to be reminded on the difference of equity and equality, as some individuals may disagree with the priorities set by district and schools, which is why it's important to include all the stakeholders in this discussion, so you don't really leave any wiggle room and everything is out in the front and transparent. All right, I think that's.
So these are just kind of our overall takeaways. there's going to be pros and cons to all budget types, just making sure that you do what's legal. Is the first step, making sure that whatever you're doing or whatever the superintendent, like as an administrator, it's your job to make sure that whatever the superintendent is telling you to do is legal, because if you don't, it's still gonna fall on you because you should also know the law.
Yes.
So regardless of your budget or how your budget is set out, it needs to be equitable so that students receive or schools receive funding based on what students need. School administrators need flexibility in deciding where their funds should go, and transparent. So everybody who's involved should understand how the money comes to them, when it's going to come to them, and what the dollars can be used for, especially when you're talking about like Title I funds and things like that. Being able to know what you can use the money for and what you can't use it for.
Exactly. And you don't get creative here. You don't paint outside the lines or think outside the box. That this is not the time. Operations is never the time to do
that. We also said like overall the budget or how you spend the discretionary money that you have should address the priorities of your school community and the needs of the students. The goals, the outcomes, and the objectives should determine where and how you allocate those funds within your school. You have to plan fiscally. You can't just plan like month by month. And what's best for students should always be the top priority. And then the last page is just reference.
Okay. All right, very good. But again, we need to always remember what Whitney just said. And thank you for that, Whitney. Nobody can give you permission to break the law. You need to make sure that you know the law, and that you don't do something now. And as a principal, if the superintendent manipulated the money like Chapel Hill Carborough, you have no liability in that. If you're the school that got some of that money, you have no liability. But now, if you were part of that, moving that money or spending your money, then yeah, you would be. But Whitney made a good point. Nobody can give you permission to break the law. You've got to understand. It's cut and dried on the money, and it follows the kid. The federal money can't be moved. You know that. State money, Landro says that. Flat grant funding, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where you end up. It only has to start. Again, I'm in Charlotte. They spend nearly as much. They spend nearly as much locally as the state gives here because it's a wealthy place. Now, let's talk about that. I'm at the big house tonight. What would you think the parents in this neighborhood would think about taking money from their schools and giving it to somebody else? They'd be mad.
Object. There ain't no Robin Hood.
I'm telling you what, this is Robin Hood. I'm telling you what, this bunch would be mad. They'd be mad at fire. No, I can tell you right now. But now, here's the thing. I've been here for 30 years. I could never afford to live here. This is what they would say. This is the most expensive community in North Carolina. We pay the highest county tax of the 100 counties in North Carolina in Mecklenburg. We pay the highest city tax in the town of Cornelius, which is here at Lake Norman. Our property tax is ridiculous. This house I'm sitting in. Now, listen carefully to what I'm saying. My valuation is not $300,000. It just simply went up $300,000 at one time. I'm now a millionaire. There is nothing less than $1 million here. My water bill is $200 a month. I got the lake in the backyard, it's still $200 a month. Costs $300 a month to get my yard mowed. I don't have a big yard. I drive 8 times a month, coming and going. You know, I stay at the little house at resort during the week. I drive the toll lane on 77 8 times a month. I only drive 2 sections. There's 6 between here and Charlotte, or 8. I only drive 2 sections. I do it 8 times a month, Monday and Friday, 4 times, 2 times a week for 4 weeks. My toll bill alone is $170 for those 8 trips on the toll. Only 2 sections of the toll. My work clothes, my shirt and pants that I have pressed every week, $20. Somebody said, where you take them? Front porch. They come and get them here. Everything here. You just don't get it living here. You don't understand the expense of living here. What stuff costs here. How much tax we pay here. Pay the highest tax rate in North Carolina and Mecklenburg County on sales tax as well. Highest gas prices in the state. You think my neighbors are going to be pleased when you take their money as much as they're being taxed here and as much as it's expensive as it costs, and their property evaluations are through the roof, and the millage is the highest in the state by far? You think that you're going to ever talk them into it's the right thing to do? Take money from their kid and give to somebody else's? Ooh. Ooh.
That was part of the argument they made in front of the Supreme Court, I think, during Leandro 4 was
yes.
One of the justices asked that question. So, in essence, is it fair for a theoretical county who does not develop its resources or tax at a sufficient rate to, in essence, get a free ride off of the
Robin Hood?
Yeah.
Now, we all agree that it's the right thing to do to get more resources to those kids. And so the salve, the balm or the salve for that wound was, we'll have a lottery. We knew that was never going to be anything. That was just a complete hoax. That's just regressive tax on poor people who don't know better, who don't understand probability. I don't understand people who gamble. I mean, if you stay at it long enough, the law of averages. I mean, we've even gone to we've sunk so low on gambling on pro sports to the point where we now have a person in the booth, a former or retired official, to explain to you what you just saw wasn't what you saw, so that you'll still believe in the credibility and continue to gamble on things. And this notion of, well, the calls balance out over the season. No, in statistics and probability, there's a theorem. It's called gambler's fallacy. And you have to understand that each game is an independent chance. It's not affected. So it doesn't matter if you get you get a makeup call next week. That game's already over. You've already lost that bet. And you would have, for calls to balance out, there'd have to be 10,000 of them, and there's only 4 or 5 during the season that matter. There's no way for them to balance out. If you understood probability, you would know that a lottery is no way to fund anything, and it's completely pork barrel. They ran a couple commercials for projects. One of them was a cafeteria up in Stokes County, I think it was, and that was, they couldn't figure out how to have 2 lunch shifts. They wanted all 3. They didn't have 300 kids. High school needed to be closed, and what they do, they spent about 4 times what a cafeteria cost, and of course they stole 3/4 of it and built a cafeteria. And then after people questioned, why in the world did you need a cafeteria? The high school needed to be closed, and why did it cost this much for that little building that you built? They quit running that ad. And then the next one was the NASCAR Institute. Somebody said, why are you funding $1 billion private industry? And so they quit running that one. That's up in Mooresville in Ireland County. And so the history of the lottery is it's put $0 in instruction for what we're talking about here to help kids instruction. It's been stolen, taken, been misused, mismanaged, what little bit was left, because it's completely political. It's not in a funding formula. It's pork barrel. It's allocations. And so truly the only way to do what we're talking about is student-based or school-based budgeting. 36, I believe it's 36 states do that. Of the 50 states, a lot do, but a lot of them are stopped doing it because they're becoming red states and they're getting control of the legislature and they're moving back to a flat rate funding. So my understanding is that prior to COVID there, and prior to 2016, there were 36 or 37 states. Now there's only 28. We're going backwards on the funding, just like we went backward on Roe v. Wade, backward on a lot of things. We're walking that stuff back. And so it's a sign of the times. But the bigger issue for us is, what is the law? Always, when you in anything like this, what is the law? What's the policy? Let me find it out. I was talking about earlier. Olivia was talking about have all these forms to help. Yeah, they help you, but they're there for a reason as well. Make sure that you follow the process. Are you following the policy? Are you following the law? That's the whole notion here. Is whenever you have an idea, just like they used to tell me all the time. Whenever you have an idea, don't think you're hurting the team. Thinking outside the box is not a good thing when it comes to following policy. Now I told you my first assignment for my policy class, my 738 class, my doctoral group, my first was who the policy players in the district. I was surprised that not one of them said the county commissioners. Who funds schools? Fund the school board. They put the budget, but who funds their budget? All right. Then, they are the policy players in your district. They focused on when a policy comes and how you work it through for it to get adopted. My question is who came up with this damn fool idea? That's the most important part, not how you work it through the process. That's procedural. I don't need to know the substance. Where did this policy come from? And that's, understand that your school board is just puppets for your county commissioners. So if it came through one of them, but that's not truly where it came from. It came from the county commissioners because they're the ones that can tax, have the taxing authority. They're the one that fund the budget. School board members, school boards are unempowered. All they can do is recommend the budget to the county commissioners. They can't put the first penny behind it. So your biggest policy players are your county commissioners. And again, those are partisan elections and they're district elections. Let me say that again. They're partisan and district. In many places, school board is neither. But the people that are in charge of them, it's partisan, party, Democrat, Republican, and by district. And so you can see now why we're going backwards on school based, because if I'm the county commissioner for the northern part of Mecklenburg County, I'm not going to be real happy if my constituent finds out that I've gone along with giving more money to schools in some other district. I'm probably not going to get reelected. That's the nature of the beast. All right, next group. Good job.
We can go next. Let me see.
Good.
So here. All right, is everybody able to see the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So we're going over case study 2, which is titled Letter to the Community. It's presented by myself, Leslie Norman, Jessica, Lakeitha, and then also Lillian. I'm going to turn it over to Jessica to get us started.
All right, so I wanted to go over kind of the key findings from the case that we're going over. So some of the key points that we found was that the equitable education, ensuring equal opportunity within of the budgets, the state accountability for that the states are held accountable for providing equitable resources and education opportunities, improved educational outcomes that making sure that the resources are given to the allotted states, or sorry, the districts. And then another key point is that other states did follow suit when this case happened, and they started coming up with some of the rules that this case did present for them. And one of the shortcomings that we did find was the vague standards that a sound-based education can be subjective, and sometimes it can bite them.
So in this case, the whole notion of the sound basic education, you can go to the next slide, was it's whatever we give you. Kind of ask and answer. What's the sound? It's $7,000 at that point. It's $7,000. It's $7,000. Well, what? No, it's kind of like they reverse engineered it. This is how much we're going to give you. So that's a sound basic education. Now that's kind of been twisted lately. That's what West Ed said. You said the sound basic education. Well, what you've been paying is not enough. But they beg to differ. What they're saying is whatever we give you by virtue of our authority as the legislative group is what a sound basic education is. It's not about the characteristics or the content. It's basically, it's a money argument. Whatever we give you that's enough. West Ed came in and said, which is an independent group. Now they're not empowered to do anything. West Ed can't do any of this. But they said, no, it's not. A sound basic education is a standard. It's things that we can identify. They said, no, it's how much money we give you. And you can't make us give you more. And the judge said in the case, on Leandro Revisited, said, no, you owe them $2 billion. And they said, no, we're not going to give it to you. No.
I thought coming out of Leandro
Okay.
3.
Sorry,
that
is it
was-
my turn now?
I'm
I'm sorry. Did I cut somebody off?
No, that's fine. I withhold my comment until my minutes.
All right.
All right. So, with preliminary steps and considerations, there were 4 things that we kind of discussed prior to the changing of the funding for the school to that new student-based budgeting. The superintendent first should have definitely considered that unanimous court decision that neither school districts nor countries have any constitutional right to equal funding from that Leandro versus state case. So, I mean, legal compliance, of course, should have been number 1. And just really from our text, states have the primary role for providing the public education. And I know we've already talked about how that works, but that should have been number 1. He should have considered. Also thinking about the county commission, the board approval process, the fiscal policy. All stakeholders, of course, should have been involved in the process. And then he could have also thought about like some other sources of funding for the schools, business partnerships, local foundations, naming some of the selling rights to some of the facilities and outsourcing services. So those are the 4 biggest considerations we got.
That's a great slide, folks. Y'all all take a picture of that one. That's a great slide right there. That's the proper order and the proper things in the proper order that you legally have to work through. Right there you go. Excellent. Most excellent. Is it legal? That's the first thing he should have considered. Is this legal? No. Second thing is, superintendent is secretary to the board. Superintendent is secretary to the board. They don't set fiscal policy. They're only secretary. They're not a voting member. They're secretary to the board. Fiscal policy. Board approves that and the county commission funds them. So we had a legal problem, then we had a policy problem, and then we got to what the first group identified is we've got a problem with we didn't involve our stakeholders. We threw principals under the bus. Told them that you got problems or questions, call them, don't call me. And fourth, I love this one. You should have been thinking about other ways. You should have been thinking about other ways if to get other sources of money. But that's exactly the right order. Law comes first, then policy, And then, best practice, and that's the ethical piece involving your stakeholders. So that's a great slide right there. Thank you, Lillian. For Jessica, that's really good. Leslie, Nikita, that's really good.
And of course, we know that John D was our problem. He had a few of his pros. He wanted to enhance equity funding. He did pilot the program. Other districts around was having success, and it did provide transparency. But the issue was there was not going to be fairness to all stakeholders, which we just stated. And the parents should have been involved from the very onset if this was going to occur. And the research to ensure that this is legal is the biggest con that we had.
Yeah.
And then for our biggest impacts and takeaways, of course, as we've been talking about, the legal standpoint of the case was the biggest takeaway. Of course, in the Leandro case, they stated that neither school district nor counties have the constitutional right to equal funding. We also had the takeaway that you can't move money throughout the budget and you must follow those correct processes. And then we dived a little deeper where we were just talking about that even 30 years later, this is an ongoing educational impact or educational issue that impacts students of color and low income families. And speaking on the allocation of funds that you do have with that equity versus equality debate, and then also looking for those other sources of funding to kind of substitute that money that you may be lacking.
Yeah.
And then that's it for us, you guys.
Excellent, 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 excellent. Just like when you're doing your master schedule, what's the rationale? Federal law comes first, then state law, then local board policy, then your performance data, and then teacher input. And it's not random. It has to go in that order. They just showed you when you're looking at something like a funding, a legal issue, what's the law? What's your local policy? What's the equity? What's the ethical thing to do? Parent involvement. And then what could an alternative be? If we strike out on the first three, what could our alternative be? It's the same thing. Everything in law has a rationale. It's what's called a rationale, a process that you go through. But the sequence of that is what's important. The sequence is most important. So just like the first group started out with the third thing, the ethical piece of it. That's great that you explored the ethics, but that's third. You got to do the law and policy first. You got to talk about those first. You never get to the ethical piece if you can't pass the first two tests. You can't get to the third. And if you can't pass the third, you fail the first three, then you have to go to number 4. That's the perfect slide. That is the rationale. Law, policy, ethics, alternatives goes that order always. Always has to go that way. This is not one of those cases where it's better to ask forgiveness than permission. How'd that work out for the superintendent in Chapel Hill Carver? It won't work out well for you, not in law. Because what's your number one job? What they hire you to do? Carry out law and policy. You can't claim that you didn't know, can you? Because that was the whole purpose of them hiring you. Do you teach a soul as a school principal? No. Our job is to carry out law and policy. Period. And so you can't go to court and say, I didn't know what my job was. Ignorance of the law is no excuse. If it was your job to know what the law was, then you can't use that as an excuse when you go to court. Boy, they'll just wear you out. They'll talk ugly to you too. It gets pretty nasty in court, I can tell you. It gets pretty nasty. All right, next group. I like that one. That was a good one. I like that the first group identified. I love that you put it in that logical order. I mean, that's how it's got to flow. Very good. 2 good presentations so far. Like it.
I think we are up. We can't hear you, Olivia.
Olivia is muted.
Sorry, I'm at the beach with church camp.
Which beach are you at? You're at Caswell?
Yep, we're at Oak Island.
Oh, yeah, Oak Island, Caswell. Look at you.
Yep, I know.
Aren't you good Baptist?
Skipping church for school.
Wednesday night. You know, people always tell me about what a heathen I am for not going to church on Wednesday night. We have noon service at Garden Web on Wednesdays, specifically for that. We have chapel at noon. I'm on campus on Wednesdays, so I need all the churching up I can get.
Okay, Roger, are you going to share it?
I'm trying, Lord, I'm trying. Can y'all see it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, why can't
And
I?
he answered.
Why can't I see it?
No.
Well, we'll tell you what slide you're on if you want.
Okay, I mean, we can roll like that, but I'm stuck. I can't move. Okay, well, let's see what happens. Did it move to the next slide?
No.
No.
There it is.
It moved?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we can go back to one. Okay, great. Hello, everybody. All right. Let me move this out my way. I need you gone. Thank you. All right. This is case study 2. We are team OSR, Olivia, Sean, and Roger. And I'm going to turn it over to Olivia.
Okay. Hey, everybody. I'm just doing a brief case overview. We've already heard it twice, but I'll do it again. So the superintendent of the school system wanted to pilot a student-based budgeting system. And of course, to try and reach the needs for the specific student. School-based budgeting gives authority to principals to allocate funds among various line items. It must involve all stakeholders in the process, which this superintendent did not. And then this budgeting is not legal in North Carolina. So that was one big issue. The superintendent just took it upon himself to try and spread the needs out. We also know that the dollars follow the students. You can't really change any of that at all. If there is a budget code, it must stay that budget code. You can't use federal dollars for state positions or vice versa. The money has to stay where the money is allocated for. Yep. And so that's just basically the case overview, is that the superintendent wanted to try and spread the money out with a formula he created to hit the needs of the students. And in theory, that's great. We would all like for more money to be where there's needs, but in our case, it's not going to happen. And it looks like it's not going to happen anytime soon. I'm good.
Now, you're right about anytime soon, but I gotta admit, Dr. Lamb, you're gonna be in trouble with my wife after introducing me to watching Supreme Court arguments, because I can't help it. It's fun.
It's like a comedy show. I'm telling you what.
It is. I mean, it's watching the Supreme Justice or the head justice look at one of the lawyers, essentially tell him, "I wrote that, and what you're saying is wrong," without saying that.
Yeah. Yeah.
My friend over on
it's like a confederacy of dunces. I mean, it's like a race to the bottom. Who could be the dumbest? And the most obsequious. No, they're lying. They're lying. They know and it's just the most disingenuous process you've ever watched in your life. It's better acting than soap operas, if that's possible.
The legislature needs to find themselves a new lawyer, though. That guy can't.
Well, I'm telling you what. I have to go once a month, and I'm there, and at DPI once a month I have to go over there, and that bunch. I'm telling you.
say we've talked about the history of Leandro at this point. It's been said, and I just wanted to throw the key findings that came out of Leandro. First and foremost, it affirmed that students have a constitutional right to a sound basic education, and it defined what that sound basic education was. You have to have competent, certified, well-trained teacher in every classroom. You have to have a well-trained, competent principal with leadership skills, ability to hire or retain at the buildings, and you got to put the resources forward. And that's where the current argument is the resource piece of that argument, and that was fun to watch. And they also said, look, locally, you can raise more money if you want, but we're going to give you money and you can't argue about that money, even though from a legislature standpoint, don't care, you can't make us. And that's a judicial legislature argument over separation of powers. They've gone past what's right for the students, even if they say that. It's just a separation of powers argument now. So where are we right now? You got Leandro 4. The legislature is still arguing that the court can't override the General Assembly on spending decisions. The comptroller bowed out, said, I'm out of this. I'll just do what you tell me. And I found it interesting that the legislature is continuing to the legislature's lawyer is arguing that the only people that had standing was Hope County, but you can't even argue anymore because there's no students, so you don't have standing, shut up and go home. That was an interesting part to watch in that one. I didn't think the court was going to accept that one, but it was interesting to watch Mark make the argument.
Well, I mean, basically what they're saying is nanny, nanny, boo, boo. We don't have to.
Exactly.
And it's just that dumb.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have to. It's not about the arguing. It's not about the quality of the argument. It's not about kids. It's just, you can't make us. It's what Sean just said. It's now a separation of powers. You can't make us do anything. Our contention is whatever we gave you is whatever it costs to do that. So we don't owe you anything. And that you brought some independent people in who said that it costs more than what you gave us and that we got to give more. We don't have to. You can't make us do that. And that's where it is. It's now a separation of powers constitutional. It's no longer about kids in Hope County or Granville, or it doesn't matter anymore, or Rutherford, below Weld counties. It's not about that anymore. It's about your politics now.
Your plaintiffs on the side, they make the exact opposite argument. Yes, there is standing. This has been argued. The court has ruled. Legislature, you shouldn't even be in here making this argument anymore, because in 23, the court told legislature, shut up and color. Pardon for saying that, but that's essentially what they did. Move the money, get over it, move on. So what do we care about it as a building level principal, as a principal at the building level? What do we care about this? One, the right to a sound basic education was affirmed. It's a constitutional right. You can do nothing that takes away the right to the child. The only way to remove a constitutional right is if you have the legal authority to do so. You have a law has said you can do it, and you follow the rule of law. If you don't do any of that, and you're not a legal authority to take away a right, which would be removing a student from a classroom, suspensions fall into this one, you can't do it. It's illegal, and good luck in court. Don't like your chances. It has defined what a sound basic education is, which I interpret as saying, well, that means to the maximum extent practical, I have to make sure there is a competent, certified, well-trained teacher in every classroom. I have to, ensure that I am well-trained and competent to do my job, which means I got to keep up with what I've got to take care of. And I have to be a good custodian of the resources. Even though we can't get part 3 there of all the resources, and you should have listened to the argument about the 115 teachers they're short in Hope County and how they're going to try to fix that one. That was fun to listen to. But you have to do your best to meet the requirements of a sound basic education, because that's a constitutional right, and you can't take that away without due process. So from our takeaway now, that's where we stand on Landry. Last piece there, when the resource piece is, we've said it over and over again, only spend money how you are told you can spend money. You are not necessarily in the business of budgeting. You are in the business of accounting.
Yeah.
Don't budget, just account. And if you do that, then you should be fine, and you'll
Should
be
be
okay with
fine.
it.
And what little budgeting that you have control over, as we learned in OMA Task 1, still you need, it's making decisions, but it's just your little local budget, and you need to make sure the school improvement team is involved in that. So
And
that
thank
you
you for
can show that you're supporting the master schedule, and that your master schedule and your budget are supporting that state required school improvement plan.
and thank you for bringing that up, because it reminded me to say this part about it, is that when you are involved in the budgeting part of the process, you have to follow, and I forget the acronym it used in our book, but there's a set of budgeting principles, the good practices you must follow. You can't all be one person. It's got to be at least two people. And so follow that. I'm going to say it because I like it. Don't get creative. Don't try to reinvent the wheel. Follow the rules, and it'll be okay. And everybody's going to get the best deal they're going to get at the end.
Yeah. The two things that get school administrators more than anything else is anything to do with sex. They don't have to be involved anymore. Used to be, it was your money or your honey, but they don't even have to be involved anymore. Anything sexual you didn't handle correctly, or money. Those are money or your honey. Those are the two things, and that does not change. The sex one has expanded now. It's not just your personal behavior, but what did you do as a result of these things that could have happened at your campus? That's time immemorial. Sexual stuff or money stuff. It gets 90% of the administrators that lose their job. That's what gets not those things. Other due process issues are the other 10%. All right, moving on.
Roger, that's up to you, good sir.
All right, thank you. So thank you, Olivia. Thank you, Sean. Thank you, everybody. So I'm here to just basically drop the bottom line. All right. Which way are you going to go? Right. I think Dr. Lamb gave us one of the biggest takeaways tonight is know why you are hired. Right. If you wait tables, know why you're hired. All right. If you are a lawyer, know why you're hired. And in our position, we need to understand that we need to follow the guidelines of abiding by the law, then looking at the policies, and then from there being ethical, and then what other ways can we raise these funds or get funds to secure the things that we want to do. And in each of those processes, we should be involving other people, stakeholders, community members, right, other leaders in the school to help us out. So the bottom line here is on the left side, the man and the horse, they didn't understand, right? They thought they could do what they wanted to do, and know that you cannot bend federal laws, state laws. They are what they are, and you have to abide by them. That is just simply the bottom line. Okay. If you don't follow what they put out there, you're going to be the gentleman here on the side. I always tell my students, look, I need you to do my homework because I don't want to see you on the side of the road. And I say, but if I do, have color markers. Okay. At least have it in color. All right. And we move over to the right side. We look at the gentleman up there. He's like, oh, no, wait a minute. I need some help here. I need to find out what this money is for. So he used his federal and state money in the right way. He didn't move it around. And why would he hire the other dude to come in and work for him? You know, it's just like you didn't follow the policies there. So basically, when you don't follow the policy somewhere, you might actually ruin your entire career, not this job that you have. Like I said, make sure you know the laws. The only thing you get out of breaking the rules is maybe feeling good about your ethics, but you basically are putting your job, your livelihood, your family in jeopardy of having their milk and bread for the next day.
Yeah.
All right, and that's all I have, Dr. Lamb.
Thank you. I
Yes,
like
sir.
that. That was a good one. Another one of those. I love that slide. I love that slide. you know, the very reason that school administrators are good is they're ego driven, they're competitive, they want to do good. That gets you in trouble when it comes to stuff like this, because you want what you want. You're so highly motivated. You're willing to do whatever it takes to get it. So you're that ego drive, that that ambition. That's what gets you at this point. A lot of times, you know better, but you're factoring in, if I pull this off. But again, the means don't justify the ends. In when you're talking about the law, there is no asking forgiveness. It just doesn't work. All right, who's next?
All right, we're up. David, you sharing, or you want me to share?
I could share.
Great.
Can you see that?
Nope, not yet. Let me turn my camera off. Let me stop my video. Who's that, Olivia? Who's got Olivia got on the screen there?
Oh, that's my little girl.
Oh.
Okay. So it's our first beach trip.
Good for her. Good for her. That's a good place to start, guys. Get that worthy home training to start with. That's what you need.
Can you guys see my screen right now?
Nope.
Oh. You want to try out the?
Look at that.
Can you see mine?
Yes. Yes, we got you.
Okay. All right, little background information. The superintendent sent a letter to the community about the funding. The letter states how the rollout of the funding would be allocated. And it states that the parents should be reached out later to the principals of how they can be a part of the process. And this type of funding is protected under the Leandro case from the North Carolina on school funding. This is David's part.
Yeah, so we've talked Leandro quite a bit tonight.
Yeah, you don't have to bring that part up. That's the good thing about getting to go last. By the time it gets to you, we've covered all this ground. But
yeah,
give us the gist of what you found here and what you think.
Okay,
yeah,
well, that goes to the next plan. Is the superintendent plan? Is the plan appropriate? Money is put into, it should be put into a school site fund to provide for programs. What he's doing is putting it into his on account and allotting it for things that he feels that should be good for his schools and his community. David, you want to finish up?
Yeah, I mean, it's illegal, right? We've come to that point. It's illegal. Everything else after that is moot to me, anyway. And I mean, I don't know what else. I got nothing else.
Yeah. After that, you're kind of done, but you can look through all those kinds of things. And you can stop your share. Thank you. Okay. Excellent job tonight, folks. Let's talk about, I'll try to be brief here. What would you need to do? What would you need to do in a state where you have such economic disparity? What would you need to do in order to try to from a community, a county perspective, fix this problem? Well, see, here's the secondary part of this. We have one political party who says we know the solution to this school fund problem. Corporate welfare versus social welfare. We'll give it to rich people or corporations. They'll bring jobs and prosperity. And we'll fix this inequity in the level of funding through that. So, this fiscal year, how much money is left over in North Carolina? Are they running a budget deficit or a budget surplus? Budget surplus.
Surplus, billions.
$500 million.
Hmm.
But they're putting it in reserves. And people say, well, that sounds good. That's fiscally responsible. No, it's not. You know what they're going to do with that? As soon as the next corporation comes along, they're going to give it to them to come, and they won't have to ever pay taxes. How's Facebook worked out in Rutherford County, Olivia? What a boondoggle. The county spent $20 million buying the old mill, tearing it down, improving their site. They get 0 tax dollars. They got 10 low-wage, minimum wage jobs, security, maintenance, custodial, for $20 million and no taxes in perpetuity. Mark Zuckerberg's not a multi-billionaire because he's dumb. You know, I'd say it wasn't much of a battle of wits with the county commissioners, brother. That one was over before it started. But that's where that $500 million goes. We still have one political party who still advocates, and still, no matter how many studies, independent studies show that there is no such thing as trickle-down economics. They still believe that if we give this, if we give all these economic incentives and give this money to some company, they'll fix this. It never works. The Carolina Panthers want $650 million from the Charlotte City Commissioners. They want $650 million from Charlotte Mecklenburg. The Panthers bring no prosperity unless you work for their organization. And most of the people that work for them now, they were good as gold to me. I'm going to tell you right now, they let me do the prom in their club level for free at the stadium for 2 years when I was high school principal. They were great to me. To me individually, they were great to our kids. But truthfully, do you think we ought to give them $650 million? Wealthy people? But that's where all this is headed, folks, is you say, well, how are we going to address this? Well, we have one political party who says we're going to address it through giving rich people more money and corporations more money, and that will cause it to trickle down and fix this problem. I've been waiting nearly 50 years for this. I've been waiting since 1980. What's that? 44 years. Is that right? 24 years? 44 years I've been waiting. 44 years I've been waiting for that to happen in the school business. It's not happening. So after 44 years, I feel safe in saying it's not going to happen. But that's what we continue to do. Instead of taking the money that we ought to be given and fixing this problem, or attempting to fix this problem, we're going to save it and we're going to give it to some corporation. And we've done that for the last 44 years. It just doesn't work, but that's what we're going to do. So that is the solution of the people who are in charge. No, they don't. People say, well, they got the money. Well, because they've got something else in mind for that money that fits their political agenda. It fits their political worldview that corporate welfare is okay, social welfare is bad. That we invest in trickle-down economics. That is their worldview. Now, some of you may have the same one, but I'm just telling you. People say, well, how can they just, well, that's their belief system. That is their belief system. Anybody else have anything for the good of the group? Y'all are already, see, some of you are already on vacation. So I don't get to, I don't I'm not gonna get to go until later on in June or July myself. I'm having to mind the store. Everybody else is out. I'm number 3 in the College of Ed. 1 and 2 are on vacation, so I'm actually having to go in and work every day. I hate that. All right. Well, if nothing else tonight, y'all did a great job. Give yourself a hand. I appreciate you. I will see you in 2 weeks. Everybody be safe during your holiday. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Dr. Lamb. Goodbye.
Thank you.